sort of had those periods of play with, you know, during our wake times, whether it be in young babies in between nap times, or whether it be in older children that may have gone off to kinder or childcare or school. It's how we sort of use that time in the afternoons when they get home from school to help them to offload any of the stress and tension that hasn't been offloaded. So you may have sort of, I suppose, heard of that broken cookie analogy. You give your child the wrong cup when you do afternoon snack or something, and the whole world has changed, and that is just not okay, and we've got tears and we've got tantrums, and I don't want the yellow cup, I wanted the pink cup or whatever. And that's just their way of expressing any of those sort of built up emotions. It's often nothing to do with the color cup they've got. That was just sort of like the straw that broke the camel's back. So then it's uncovering, again, holding the space for that those big feelings to come up and surface. And then they've often got by that older age, they've got the ability to be able to articulate, but they need to sort of, I suppose, I call it clear the fog. So they need to release the stress and tension to be able to think clearly, to actually be able to have that connection with us, to be able to tell us what the actual problem is.
Yes.
So I had an example of this today. My son had been to like a sports camp, and he was all very sheepish and quite sad and angry when he got home, and we had a little play, and I'm, you know, just waiting for the balloon to pop and waiting for the tantrum, or waiting for, you know, to see to uncover what had actually happened. And just by creating that closeness with him through the play, we had a bit of a play wrestle, and, you know, I just sort of, you know, got in close with him and snuggled in and said, I want to hear about your day. And then it wasn't until we had that sort of closeness and connection that he could tell me that he had been sort of bullied, and the kids didn't want him to be included in the game that they were playing, and someone threw a ball at his head, and another kid stole his hat, and things like that. So then you can sort of work through, and, you know, how that made you feel, and and empathize and say, I can see why you're feeling a bit sad this afternoon, mate. That was a big day for you. And, you know, and, you know, just provide that comfort and safety. But if that wasn't offloaded then we would have had that sort of offload when, you know, we were leading into bedtime tonight, and I would have been wondering why he wouldn't settle and why, you know, he needed me to be close. And then it probably would have come out, you know, during a head rub time, or, you know, he would have been playing up and resisting sleep because he would have been still carrying that stress and tension from his day.
It can be very that's a beautiful example, and so relevant. Like this model of supporting our children to feel their feelings and work through their feelings starts at the very beginning, but it's so true for adulthood as well. Now, as busy parents who, you know, potentially, you know, working full-time, picking children up from daycare, like that need to reconnect with their children in order to then set up that sort of bedtime routine, and the parent doesn't have much in the tank. Like, what about parent resistance? What do you say to parents who just say, look, I just want my baby to go to bed, or I want my child to go to sleep, I've got nothing else to give them?
Yeah.
How would you
so I think I think it does come back to sort of, I suppose, working out what you're sort of doing an assessment of yourself and finding out what your capacity is for the play, and what your capacity is for holding the space to be able to listen to those tears. So you might sort of go, I haven't got much in me today. It's going to have to keep it really simple. But even little simple things, if we can do things like, you might do a quick running race from the car as you're coming in from childcare, or you might, you know, pick up their shoes and just sort of meet them with a bit of silliness and go, oh, these are so stinky, you must have, you know, done lots of running at childcare today, or just something to try and encourage that sort of laughter and fun. It doesn't have to be, I think parents sort of, I suppose, get overwhelmed with the thought, I'm going to have to play for, you know, 30 minutes, or I'm going to have to, and I don't have 30 minutes in me, I've got 5 minutes in me. Well, if you've got 5 minutes in you, 5 minutes is better than no minutes. So it's how we capitalize on that 5 minutes. I find things like, I call it rough housing play, or rough and tumble, is a really good way to connect after separation. Often the separation is, I say we want a bookend separation. So things like if they've been at childcare and or school or whatever, we want to connect before we leave them and connect again when we come back together. So if you got the spaciousness and the capacity to do some play, and I think things like setting a timer on the play, so saying, okay, we've got 10 minutes to play, I'm going to set the timer, that helps to sort of set a limit, and that helps to give us, I suppose, a bit of a get out clause of going, okay, I know I've only got to do this for 10 minutes and I'm going to capitalize and do as much as I can. I'm going to do an intense, give them all my focus and all my attention, and have that one-on-one really focused time for them to offload any of the stress and tension, frustration. And then when that timer goes off, then I know that, you know, then we can sort of move on with our night. But if we don't have that 10 minutes of time, then we're going to be releasing that stress and tension and have the resistance for the whole night. So it's like, it's better to spend that sort of intensive time. It doesn't even need to be 10 minutes. It might be 5 minutes, and then it might be another 5 minutes later on. But by setting the timer, that gives them something to sort of like a boundary or a limit to push up against. So when the timer goes off, they're, oh, I don't want to finish play. I want to keep doing this. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to have a bath, or I don't want to eat dinner yet, or whatever it is. But then we can say, okay, we've had a nice time playing and I'd love to play more, but we now need to. And that's going to, if there are still feelings that are bubbling there for them that haven't come out through the laughter and the play and the fun, sometimes tears or tantrums, then it's going to sort of bubble to the surface at that point once the limit's set. So then it's having the capacity to be able to hold the space when the limit has been set. So I often recommend for my parents, if you know that you've got 10 minutes in you, you might only play for 7 minutes. So then you've got the time, you know, they're still in the bank to be able to hold the space for the feelings if the resistance is met when you set that limit and when that timer goes off.